viewers, and welcome to another chapter of reading. Whether you're in the northern hemisphere, like me, or in the southern hemisphere, happy solstice! It is the first day of summer, or winter. And I don't know if you noticed, but I have a change from last week. My change from last week is, this past Saturday, I got my hair cut to be cool for the summer, or winter, by getting my hair cut. So rather than the long hair you previously seen, I now have shorter hair at 22 inches. It is a lot nicer. I hope you like it though. In the meantime, it's truly summer or winter, because this is what the temperatures are telling us right now. Crazy, isn't it? But first day of summer or winter aside, let's get this chapter read, shall we? Chapter 2. A Peck of Owls. What? Said Harry blankly. He left, said Mrs. Big, wringing her hands. Left to see someone about a batch of cauldrons that fell off the back of a broom. I told him I'd slay him alive if he went. No. Dementors. It's just lucky I put Mr. Tibbles on the case. But we haven't got time to stand around. Hurry. Now we've got to get you back. What the trouble this is going to us. I will kill him. But the revelation that his batty old cat-obsessed neighbor knew what Dementors were was almost as big of a shock to Harry as meeting two of them down the alleyway. You're a witch, a Miss Quib, as Madame knows full well. So how on earth was I supposed to help you fight off the Dementors? He completely left you without cover when I warned him. This bloke Madame has been following me. Hang on, it was him. He separated from in the front of my house. Yes, but luckily I stationed Mr. Tibbles under a car, just in case. And Mr. Tibbles came and warned me. But by the time I got to your house, you'd gone. And now, what's Dumbledore going to say? You! She shrieked at Dudley, still supine on the alley floor. Get your father! Get your fat bottom off the ground, quick! You know Dumbledore, said Harry, staring at her. Of course I know Dumbledore. Who doesn't know Dumbledore? Let's see. Most muggles? But come on, I'll be of no help if they come back. I'm never so much as transfigured a tea bag. She stooped down, seized one of Dudley's massive arms in her wizened hands, and tugged. Get up, you useless lump! Get up! But Dudley either could not or would not move. He was still on the ground, trembling and ashen-faced, his mouth very tightly shut. I'll do it, Harry took hold of Dudley's arm and heaved. With an enormous effort, he managed to hoist Dudley to his feet. Dudley seemed to be on the point of fainting. His small eyes were rolling in their sockets and sweat was beading to his face. The moment Harry let go of him, he swayed dangerously. Hurry up, said Mrs. Big hysterically. Harry pulled one of Dudley's massive arms around his own shoulders and dragged him toward the road, sagging slightly under his weight. Mrs. Big tottered along in front of him, peering anxiously around the corner. Keep your wand out, she told Harry as they entered Wisteria Walk. Never mind the Statue of Secrecy now. There's going to be lots to pay anyway. We might as well be hanged for a dragon as an egg. Talk about the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery. This was exactly what Dumbledore was afraid of. What's that at the end of the street? Oh, it's just Mr. Pretense. Don't put your wand away, boy. Don't I keep telling you I'm no use? It was not easy to hold a wand steady and carry Dudley along at the same time. Well, yeah, I don't expect it would be. Harry gave his cousin an impatient dig in the ribs. But Dudley seemed to have lost all desire for independent movement. He was slumped on Harry's shoulder, his large feet dragging along the ground. Why didn't you tell me you were Squib? Harry asked Mrs. Fig, panting with the effort to keep walking. All those times I came around your house, why didn't you say anything? Dumbledore's orders. I was to keep an eye on you, but not say anything. You were too young. I'm sorry I gave you such a miserable time. But the Dursleys never would have let you come if they thought you enjoyed it. It wasn't easy, you know. But oh my word, she said tragically, wringing her hands once more. When Dumbledore hears about this, how could my Dungus go to bed? He was supposed to be on duty until midnight. Where is he? How am I going to tell Dumbledore what's happened? I can't apparate. I've got an owl. You can borrow her. Harry groaned. Wondering whether his spine was going to snap under Dudley's weight. Harry, you don't understand. Dumbledore will need to act as quickly as possible. The Ministry will have their own ways of detecting underage magic. They'll know already. Mark my words. But I was getting rid of Dementors. I had to use magic. They're going to be more worried what Dementors were doing floating around Wisteria Walk, surely. Oh, my dear, I wish it were so, but I'm afraid. But Dungus Fletcher, I am going to kill you! There was a loud crack. And a strong smell of mingled drink mixed with stale tobacco filled the air as a squat, unshaven man in a tattered overcoat materialized right in front of him. He had short, bandy legs, long, straggly ginger hair, and bloodshot, baggy eyes that gave him the doleful look of a basset hound. Hey, my Lux Patronus is a basset hound. He was also clutching a silvery bundle that Harry recognized at once as an invisibility cloak. So, he said, staring from Mrs. Big to Harry and Dudley. What happened to staying undercover? I'll give you undercover, cried Mrs. Big. Dementors, you useless, sniving snake thief. Dementors, repeated Mundungus aghast. Dementors here? Yes, here. You worthless pile of fat droppings here. Oh, Mrs. Big, you're hilariously funny right now, shrieked Mrs. Big. Dementors attacking the boy on your watch. Blimey, said Mundungus weakly, looking from Mrs. Big to Harry and back again. Blimey, and you love pine, stone, and cauldrons. Didn't I tell you not to go? Didn't I? Mundungus looked deeply uncomfortable. You know, I said to disappointed mother-son relationship right here. And it's hilariously funny. Mundungus looked deeply uncomfortable. It was a very good business opportunity. See, Mrs. Fig raised her arm from which her string bag dangled. Okay, my bookmark is not a bag, but just pretend. Actually, you know what? Better yet, pretend Usagi is the bag. Dangled, and Mrs. Fig raised her arm from which her string bag dangled and whacked Mundungus across the face and neck with it. Thank you. Around the... Oh yeah. Judging by the clanky noise, it was full of cat food. Well, Usagi's not full of cat food, but... Oh, get off, you metal bat. Someone's got to tell Dumbledore. Yes, they have, yelled Mrs. Big, still swinging the bag of cat food at every bit of Mundungus she could reach. And it had better be you. And you can tell him why you weren't there to help. If you Anadon, said Mundungus, his arms over his head, cowering. I'm going. And with another loud crack, he vanished. I hope Dumbledore murders him, said Mrs. Fig furiously. Now come on, Harry, what are you waiting for? Harry decided not to waste his remaining breath on pointing out that he could barely walk under Dudley's bulk. He gave the semi-conscious Dudley a heave and staggered onward. I'll take you to the door, said Mrs. Fig as they turned into Pivot Drive, just in case there were more of them around. Oh my word, what a catastrophe! You had to fight them off yourself. And how Dumbledore said we were to keep you from doing magic at all costs. Well, it's no good crying over spilled potion, I suppose. But the cat's among the pixies now. I just love these wizarding euphemisms. It gives a fresh twist on crying over spilled milk, or the crying over spilled potion, respectively. And it just gives a whole twist of it, and I just love them. Moving on. So, Harry panted, Dumbledore's been having me followed. Of course he has, said Mrs. Fig impatiently. Do you expect him to let you wander around on your own after what happened in June? Good Lord, boy, they told me you were intelligent. Right. Get inside and stay there, she said as they reached number 4. I expect someone will be in touch with you soon enough. What are you going to do? Asked Harry quickly. going straight home, said Mrs. Big, staring around the dark street and shuddering. I need to wait for more instructions. Just stay in the house. Good night. Don't go yet. I want to know. But Mrs. Fig had already set off at a trot, carpet slippers flopping, string bag clanking. Wait! Harry shouted after her. He had a million questions to ask anyone who was in contact with Dumbledore. But within seconds, Mrs. Fig was swallowed by the darkness. Scowling, Harry readjusted to Dudley on his shoulder and made his slow, painful way up number 4's garden path. The hall light was on. Harry stuck his wand back inside the waistband of his jeans, rang the bell, and watched Aunt Petunia's outline grow larger and larger. Oddly distorted by the rippling glass in the front door. Diddy! About time, too. I was getting quite... Diddy, what's the matter? Harry looked sideways at Dudley and ducked out from under his arm just in time. Dudley swayed for a moment on the spot, his face pale green. Then he opened his mouth at last and vomited all over the doormat. Ugh. Nonetheless, here's some sound effects. Diddy, what's the matter with you? Vernon! Harry and his uncle came galumphing out of the living room, his mustache blowing hither and blowing hither as it always did when he was agitated. He hurried forward to help Aunt Petunia negotiate a weak-kneed Dudley over the threshold while avoiding stepping in the pool of sick. Yeah, I would just stay clear of it altogether. He's ill, Vernon. What is it, son? What's happened? Did Mrs. Polkus give you something foreign for tea? Why are you all covered in dirt, darling? Have you been lying on the ground? Hang on. You haven't been mugged, have you, son? Aunt Petunia screamed. I will not attempt. Phone the police, Vernon. Phone the police. Diddy, darling, speak to Mommy. What did they do to you? In all the kerfuffle, nobody seemed to have noticed Harry, which suited him perfectly. He managed to slip inside just before Uncle Vernon slammed the door, and while the Dursleys made their nosy progress down the hall toward the kitchen, Harry moved carefully and quietly toward the stairs. Who did it, son? Give us names. We'll get them, don't worry. It's nice to know that Vernon cares, in his own way, at least, for Dudley. I just wish the same could have been said for Harry. Shh! He's trying to say something, Vernon. What is it? Tell Mummy. Harry's foot was on the bottommost stair when Dudley found his voice. Harry froze. Foot on the stair, face screwed up, braced for the explosion. Here he comes! Boy! Come here! With a feeling of mingled dread and anger, Harry removed his foot slowly from the stair and turned to follow the Dursleys. The scrupulously clean kitchen had an oddly unreal glitter after the darkness outside. Aunt Petunia was ushering Dudley into a chair. He was still very green and clammy looking. Uncle Vernon was standing in front of the straining board, glaring at Harry through tiny, narrowed eyes. What have you done to my son? He said in a menacing growl. Nothing, said Harry, knowing perfectly well that Uncle Vernon wouldn't believe him. What did he do to you, Teddy? Aunt Petunia said in a quavering voice, now sponging sick from the frown of Dudley's leather jacket. Was it you know what done it? Did he use his thing? Slowly, tremulously, Dudley nodded. I didn't, Harry said sharply as Aunt Petunia let out a wail, which I will not attempt, and Uncle Vernon raised his fist. I didn't do anything to him. It wasn't me. It was... But at that precise moment, a screech owl swooped in through the kitchen window, narrowly missing the top of Uncle Vernon's head. It soared across the kitchen, dropped the large piece of parchment envelope it was carrying in its beak at Harry's feet, and turned gracefully, the tips of its wings just brushing off the top of the bridge, then zoomed outside again and off across the garden. Ouch! Bellowed Uncle Vernon, the well-worn vein in his temple pulsing angrily as he slammed the kitchen window shut. Excuse me. Owls again! I will not have any more owls in my house! But Harry was already ripping open the envelope and pulling out the letter inside, his heart pounding somewhere in the region of his Adam's apple. Well, I have none, because obviously I'm a girl, but basically it would be around your warnix. And that's what causes the voice to deepen as they mature. Just a little biological input for this. I'm sorry if it's disturbing. Dear Mr. Potter, we have received intelligence that you performed the Patronus charm at 23 minutes past 9 this evening in a Muggle-inhabited area and in the presence of a Muggle. The severity of this breach for the decree of the reasonable restriction of underage sorcery has resulted in your expulsion from Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Ministry representatives will be calling at your place of residence shortly to destroy your wand. As you have already received an official warning for a previous offense under Section 13 of the International Confederation's Statute of Secrecy, we regret to inform you that your presence is required at a disciplinary hearing at the Ministry of Magic at 9 a.m. on August 12th. Hoping you are well, yours sincerely, Mafalda Hopkirk. Improper use of Magic Office, Ministry of Magic. And that name is foreshadowing. Harry read the letter through twice. He was only vaguely aware of Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia talking in the vicinity. Inside his head, all was icy and numb. One fact had penetrated his consciousness like a paralyzing dart. He was expelled from Hogwarts. It was all over. He was never going back. He looked up at the Dursleys. Uncle Vernon was purple-faced, shouting, his fist still raised. Aunt Petunia had her arms around Dudley, who was retching again. I'm just gonna put this out there. Aunt Petunia, you deserved so much better than Vernon. You really did. You deserved so much more than him. I don't even know what made you fall for him in the first place, but you definitely deserved better. Moving on. Harry's temporarily stupefied brain seemed to reawaken. Stupefied. That's foreshadowing. Ministry representatives will be calling at your place of residence shortly to destroy your wand. There was only one thing for it. He would have to run. Now, where he was going to go, Harry didn't know. But he was certain of one thing. At Hogwarts or outside it, he needed his wand. In an almost dreamlike state, he pulled out his wand and turned to leave the kitchen. "Where do you think you're going?" yelled Uncle Vernon. When Harry didn't reply, he pounded across the kitchen to block the doorway into the hall. "I haven't finished with you, boy." "Get out of the way," said Harry quietly. "You're going to stay here and explain how my son—" "If you don't get out of the way, I'm going to jinx you," said Harry, raising the wand. "You can't pull that one on me," snarled Uncle Vernon. "I know you're not allowed to use it outside that madhouse you call a school." "The madhouse has checked me out," said Harry, "so I can do whatever I like. You got 3 seconds. 1, 2... A resounding crack filled the kitchen. Aunt Petunia screamed, "I will not attempt." Uncle Vernon yelled, "which I will not attempt," and ducked. But for the third time that night, Harry was staring for a source of disturbance he had not made. He spotted it at once. A dazed and ruffled-looking Barno was sitting outside on the kitchen sill, having just collided with the closed window. Ignoring Uncle Vernon's anguished yell of "Owls!" Harry crossed the room at a run and wrenched the window open again. The owl stuck out its leg, to which a small roll of parchment was tied, shook its feathers, and took off the moment Harry had pulled off the letter. Hands shaking, Harry unfurled the second message, which was written very hastily and blotchily in black ink. "Harry, Dumbledore's just arrived at the Ministry, and he's trying to sort it all out. Do not leave your aunt and uncle's house. Do not do any more magic. Do not surrender your wand. Arthur Weasley." And for those wondering what his signature looks like, there you go. Dumbledore was trying to sort it all out. What's that mean? How much power did Dumbledore have to override the Ministry of Magic? Was there a chance he might be lulled back into Hogwarts then? A small shoot of hope burgeoned in Harry's chest, almost immediately strangled by panic. How was he supposed to refuse to surrender his wand without doing magic? He'd have to duel with the Ministry representatives. And if he did that, he'd be lucky to escape Azkaban, let alone expulsion. His mind was racing. He could run for it and risk being captured by the Ministry, or stay put and wait for them to find him here. He was much more tempted by the former, of course, but he knew that Mr. Weasley had his best interests at heart. Oh, I can see why. That's touching. And after all, Dumbledore had sorted out much worse than this before. "Right," Harry said. "I've changed my mind. I'm staying." He put himself down at the kitchen table and faced Dudley, then Aunt Petunia. The Dursleys appeared taken aback by his abrupt change of mind. Okay, I can kind of relate to Harry in this moment here because there are times where I'm like, okay, I want to do this. But then a few moments later, I'm like, actually, I want to do this instead. So yeah, I can kind of relate to that back and forth decisiveness. Moving on. Aunt Petunia glanced despairingly at Uncle Vernon. The vein in Uncle Vernon's purple temple was throbbing worse than ever. Where are all these ruddy owls from? He growled. The first one was from the Mystery of Magic, expelling me, said Harry calmly. He was straining his ears to catch noises outside in case the Ministry representatives were approaching, and it was easier and quieter to answer Uncle Vernon's questions than to have him start raging and bellowing. The second one was from my friend Ron's dad. He works at the Ministry. Ministry of Magic, bellowed Uncle Vernon. People like you in government. Oh, this explains everything. Everything. No wonder the country's going to the dogs. I kind of wish the Ministry of Magic was real, to be honest. I kind of wonder how team-ups with the Ministry of Magic and Makuza would go. And for those who do not know Makuza, well, it's essentially the American Ministry of Magic. To put it in a way that doesn't give too many spoilers than I already have out there. Moving on. When Harry did not respond, Uncle Vernon glared at him, then spat, And why have you been expelled? Because I did magic. Aha! Roared Uncle Vernon, slamming his fist down on the top of the fridge, which sprang open. Okay. Several of Dudley's well-fed snacks toppled out and burst on the floor. R.I.P. Snacks. So you admit it! What did you do to Dudley? Nothing, said Harry slightly less calmly. That wasn't me. Was, muttered Dudley unexpectedly, and Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia instantly made flapping gestures at Harry to quiet him while they both bent over for Dudley. Go on, son, said Uncle Vernon. What did he do? Tell us, darling, whispered Aunt Petunia. Pointed his wand at me, Dudley mumbled. Yeah, I did, but I didn't use. Harry began angrily, but shut up! Roared Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia in unison. Okay, I used Uncle Vernon's voice because it seemed more fitting than Aunt Petunia's. Plus, it's kind of hard to do two voices in unison all at once. So therefore, I went with Uncle Vernon. If you want to hear Aunt Petunia's, well, I guess here's Aunt Petunia's. Shut up! Moving on. Go on, son, repeated Uncle Vernon, mustache blowing about furiously. Oh, Doc, Dudley said hoarsely, shuddering. Everything, Doc. And then I heard things inside my head. Uncle Vernon and Aunt Petunia exchanged looks of utter horror. If their least favorite thing in the world was magic, closely followed by neighbors who cheated more than they did on the hosepipe ban, people who heard voices were definitely in the bottom 10. Let's see. Magic is number 1. Then it's by annoying neighbors, practically. And if people who heard voices are in the bottom 10, what else do they have on that list that annoys them so much? I am genuinely curious, okay? Moving forward. They obviously thought Dudley was losing his mind. What sort of things did you hear, Pumpkin? Breathed Aunt Petunia, very white-faced and with tears in her eyes. But Dudley seemed incapable of saying. He shuddered again and shook his large blond head. Despite the sense of numb dread that had settled on Harry since the arrival of the first owl, he felt a certain curiosity. Dementors caused a person to relive the worst moments of their life. But what spoiled, pampered, bullying Dudley have been forced to hear? Okay, well, based on what we know so far, I would like to theorize that Dudley heard I'm actually with Harry on this one. What would he have been forced to hear? Okay, I finally have an idea. Sorry it took so long, but I just needed to sort out the idea. But anyway, I am going to theorize that he heard himself alongside his parents, primarily his dad, of course, oppressing Harry. That is what I would like to theorize. And honestly, if I heard myself and slash or my family members bullying someone, yeah, that would traumatize me too. Like, it would make me question who I am and stuff. I mean, gratefully, I'm not like that. I mean, I've never bullied anyone. But it's just the idea that if I were and I did hear that would traumatize me. So that is what I would like to theorize. I theorize that Dudley heard himself and slash or his parents oppressing Harry. And I would like to think that this is a good theory, considering I don't want to give out too many spoilers, but let's just say it helps Dudley realize something. So, until we reach that point, you're just gonna have to bear with me with that summarization. But yeah, I just think that's a good theory. What do you guys think? So, moving on after that contemplative theory. How come you fell over, son? Said Uncle Vernon in How come you fell over, son? Said Uncle Vernon in a naturally quiet voice, the kind of voice he would adopt at the bedside of a very ill person. tripped, said Dudley shakily. And then he gestured at his massive chest. Dudley understood. Or Harry understood. Dudley was remembering the clammy cold that filled the ones as hope and happiness were sucked out of you. Horrible, croaked Dudley. Cold. Really cold. Okay, said Uncle Vernon in a voice of forced calm, while Aunt Petunia laid an anxious hand on Dudley's forehead to feel his temperature. What happened then, Dudders? Felt, felt, felt as if, as if, as if you'd never be happy again, Harry supplied tonelessly. Yes, Dudley whispered, still trembling. So, said Uncle Vernon, voice restored to full and considerable volume as he strained up. So, you put some crackpot spell on my son till he'd hear voices and believe he was doomed to misery or something, did you? How many times do I have to tell you? Said Harry, temper and voice rising together. It wasn't me. It was a couple of Dementors. A couple of... What's this codswoggle? Dementors, said Harry slowly and clearly. 2 of them. And what are Dementors? They guard the wizard prison, Azkaban, said Aunt Petunia. 2 seconds. Reigning silence followed these words, and then Aunt Petunia clapped her hand over her mouth as though she had but slipped a disgusting swear word. Uncle Vernon was goggling at her. Harry's brain wiggled. Mrs. Big Book was one thing, but Aunt Petunia? How did you know that? He asked her, astonished. Aunt Petunia looked quite appalled with herself. She glanced at Uncle Vernon in fearful apology, then lowered her hand slightly to reveal her horse teeth. I heard that awful boy telling her about them years ago, she said jerkily. If you mean my mom and dad, why don't you use their names? Well, he's halfway right. He's halfway right. And you're gonna find out why I say this much later. But he's halfway right. Said Harry loudly, but Aunt Petunia ignored him. She seemed horribly flustered. Harry was stunned, except for one outburst years ago, in the course of which Aunt Petunia had screamed that Harry's mother had been a freak. He had never heard her mention her sister. He was astounded that she had remembered the scrap of information about the magical world for so long, when she usually didn't put all of her energies into pretending it didn't exist. Uncle Vernon opened his mouth, closed it again, opened it once more, shut it, then apparently struggling to remember how to talk. That's a funny description. Opened it for a 3rd time, and croaked, So, they, uh, they, uh, they actually exist, do they? Dementi whatsits. Dementi whatsits. That's a bit of humor in this tense moment, I guess. Aunt Petunia nodded. Uncle Vernon looked from Aunt Petunia to Dudley to Harry, as if hoping Somebody was going to shout, "April Fool!" But nobody did. He opened his mouth yet again, but was spared the struggle to find more words by the arrival of the third owl of the evening, which had zoomed through the still open window like a feathery cannonball when it landed with a clatter on the kitchen table, causing all three of the Dursleys to jump with fright. Harry tore a second official-looking envelope from the owl's beak and ripped it open as the owl swooped back out into the night. "Enough! Owls!" muttered Uncle Vernon distractedly, stomping over to the window and slamming it shut again. "Dear Mr. Potter, further to our letter of approximately 22 minutes ago, the Ministry of Magic has revised its decision to destroy your wand forthwith. You may retain your wand until your disciplinary hearing on the 12th of August, at which an official decision will be taken. Following discussions with the headmaster of Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, the Ministry has agreed that the question of your expulsion will also be decided at that time. You should therefore consider yourself suspended from school pending further inquiries. With best wishes, yours sincerely, without a hopcoat. In proper use of Magic Office, Ministry of Magic." And again, that name is foreshadowing. Harry read this letter through 3 times in quick succession. The miserable knot in his chest loosened slightly at the thought that he was definitely not expelled, though his fears were no by means banished. Everything seemed to hang on his hearing on the 12th of August. And I should like to mention that the 12th of August is a day after my father figure's birthday. Moving on. "Well," said Uncle Vernon, recalling Harry to his surroundings. "What now? Have they sentenced you to anything? Do you not have the death penalty?" he added as a hopeful afterthought. "Hey! That is cruel, Uncle Vernon. But then again, it is rather in character for you. But still!" Moving on. "I've got to go to a hearing," said Harry. "And they'll sentence you there?" "I suppose so." "I won't give up hope then," said Uncle Vernon nastily. "Well, if that's all," said Harry, getting to his feet. He was desperate to be alone, to think. Perhaps to send a letter to Ron, Hermione, or Sirius. "No, it very well is not told," bellowed Uncle Vernon. "Sit back down." "What now?" said Harry impatiently. "Dudley!" roared Uncle Vernon. "I want to know exactly what happened to my son." "Fine!" yelled Harry, and in his temper a red and gold spark shot at the end of his wand, still clutched in his hand. All 3 Dursleys flinched, looking terrified. "Dudley and I were in the alleyway between Magnolia Crescent and Wisteria Walk," said Harry, speaking fast, fighting to control his temper. "Dudley thought he'd be smart with me. I pulled out my wand but didn't use it. The 2 Dementors then turned up." "But what are Dementors?" Dementors. What another humor spot in this tense chapter. Asked Uncle Vernon fiercely. "What do they do?" "I told you, they suck all the happiness out of you," said Harry. "And if they get the chance, they kiss you." "Kiss you?" said Uncle Vernon, his eyes popping slightly. "Kiss you?" It's what they call it when they suck the soul out of your mouth. And Petunia uttered a soft scream. Well, okay. Since it's soft, I'll attempt this one. Ah! Soft enough? His soul! They didn't say. He still got his... She seized Dudley by the shoulders and shook him as though testing whether she could hear his soul rattling around inside him. Of course they didn't get his soul. You know if they had, said Harry, exasperated. What the mob did you say? Said Uncle Vernon loudly, with the appearance of a man struggling to bring the conversation back into a plane he understood. Gave him the old one too, did you? You can't give a Dementor the old one too, said Harry through clenched teeth. Why is he all right then? Blustered Uncle Vernon. Why isn't he all empty then? Because I used the Patronus. Whoosh! With a clattering, a whirring of flames, and a soft ball of dust, the fourth owl came shooting out of the kitchen fireplace. God's sake! Roared Uncle Vernon Flynn. Great clumps of hair out of his mustache, something he hadn't been driven to in a long time. I will not have owls here! I will not tolerate this, I tell you! But Harry was already pulling off a roll of parchment from the owl's leg. He was so convinced that this letter had to be from Dumbledore, explaining everything. The Dementors, Mrs. Fig, what the Ministry was up to, how he, Dumbledore, intended to sort out everything. And for the first time in his life, he was disappointed to see Sirius's handwriting. You know, I kind of want to know Lupin's perspective in all this is. Come to think of it, I really would like to know. Anyhow, disappointed to see Sirius's handwriting. Ignoring Uncle Vernon's ongoing rant about owls. Personally, I find owls fascinating. And narrowing his eyes against a second cloud of dust as the most recent owl took off back up the chimney, Harry read Sirius's message. Arthur's just told us what's happened. Don't leave the house again, whatever you do. Again, I still want to know Lupin's perspective in all this. Harry found this such an inadequate response to everything that happened tonight that he turned the piece of parchment over, looking for the rest of the letter, but there was nothing there. And now his temper was rising again. Wasn't anybody going to say, well done, for fighting off two Dementors single-handedly? Okay, well done, Harry. There, I said it to you because you deserve it. Both Mr. Weasley and Sirius were acting as though he'd misbehaved, and they were saving their tellings off until they could ascertain how much damage had been done. Pack. Funny. It's funny how this is here because a group of owls is called a parliament. Just a little avian tidbit for you. Moving on. Of owls shooting in and out of my house, and I won't have it, boy. I won't. I can't stop the owls coming. Harry snapped, crushing Sirius's letter in his fist. Just pretend you saw I used the letter. I want the truth about what happened tonight. Barked Uncle Vernon. If it was the Menders. Humor intense chapter. Oh, Dudley, how come you've been expelled? You know what? You've admitted it. Harry took a deep standing breath. His head was beginning to ache again. He wanted more than anything to get out of the kitchen, away from the Dursleys. I did the Patronus charm to get rid of the Dementors, he said, forcing himself to remain calm. It's the only thing that works against them. But what were Dementoids doing in Neverwinter? Dementoids. Humor in a tense chapter, said Uncle Vernon in tones of outrage. Couldn't tell you, said Harry wearily. No idea. His head was pounding in the glare of the strip light window. His anger was ebbing away. He felt drained, exhausted. Wheeze. That would change things. That would change things, wouldn't it? I am so sorry. The Dursleys were all staring at him. Yeah, I would feel drained and exhausted too after all that. It's you, said Uncle Vernon forcefully. It's got to do something with you, boy. I know it. Why else would they turn up here? Why else would they be down that alleyway? You've got to be the only. Evidently, he couldn't bring himself to say the word wizard. The only you know what for miles. I don't know why they were here. But at these words of Uncle Vernon's hair. Oh, wrong voice. Sorry. I don't know why they were here. But at these words of Uncle Vernon's, Harry's exhausted brain drawn back into action. Why had the Dementors come to Neverwinter? How could it be coincidence that they arrived in the alleyway where Harry was? Had they been sent? Had the Ministry of Magic lost control of the Dementors? Had they deserted Azkaban and joined Voldemort as Dumbledore had predicted they would? These Dementors guard some weirdo's prison, said Uncle Vernon, lumbering in the wake of Harry's train of thought. Yes, said Harry. If only his head would stop hurting. If only he could just leave the kitchen, get to his dark bedroom, and think. Oh, they were coming to arrest you, said Uncle Vernon with the triumphant air of a man reaching an unassailable conclusion. That's it, isn't it, boy? You're on the run from the law. Of course I'm not, said Harry, shaking his head as though to scare off his fly. His mind racing now. Then why? He must have sent them, said Harry quietly, more to himself than to Uncle Vernon. What's that? Who must have sent them? Lord Voldemort, said Harry. He registered dimly how strange it was that the Dursleys, who flinched, winced, and squawked if they heard the words like wizard, magic, or wand, could hear the name of the most evil wizard of all time without the slightest tremor. Yeah, that is a little ironic, isn't it? Lord, hang on, said Uncle Vernon, his face screwed up a look of dawning comprehension in his piggy eyes. I've heard that name. That was the one who murdered my parents. Yes, Harry said. Oh, hugging Harry. Harry said. But he's gone, said Uncle Vernon impatiently, without the slightest sign that The murder of Harry's might be a painful topic to anybody. Well, rightfully so, I guess. The giant bloke said so. He's gone. He's back, said Harry heavily. It felt very strange to be standing here in Aunt Petunia's surgically clean kitchen, beside the top of the range fridge and the widescreen television, and talking calmly about Lord Voldemort to Uncle Vernon. Yeah, that would be a little bit of a shock, wouldn't it? The arrival of the Dementors in Niddling seemed to have caused a breach in the great invisible wall that divided the relentlessly non-magical world of Pivot Drive and the world beyond. Harry's two lives had somehow become fused, and everything had been turned upside down. The Dursleys were asking for details about the magical world, and Mrs. Fig knew Albus Dumbledore. The Mentors were soaring around Niddling, and he might never go back to Hogwarts. Harry's head dropped more painfully. Back, whispered Aunt Petunia. She was looking at Harry as she had never looked at him before. And all of a sudden, for the very first time in his life, Harry fully appreciated that Aunt Petunia was his mother's sister. Oh, I know that's a bit of a shock for me to react so positively of, but it is, in a way, touching, if you think about it. He could not have said why this hit him so very powerfully at this moment. All he knew was that he was not the only person in the room who had an inkling of what Lord Voldemort being back might mean. Aunt Petunia had never in her life looked at him like that before. Her large, pale eyes, so unlike her sister's, were not narrowed in dislike or anger. They were wide and fearful. The furious pretense that Aunt Petunia had maintained all Harry's life, that there was no magic and no world other than the world she inhabited with Uncle Vernon, seemed to have fallen away. Yes, Harry said, talking directly to Aunt Petunia now. He came back a month ago. I saw him. Her hands found Dudley's massive, weather-clad shoulders and clutched him. Hang on, said Uncle Vernon, looking from his wife to Harry and back again, apparently dazed and confused by the unprecedented understanding that seemed to have sprung up between them. Hang on, this Lord Boldy thing's back, you say? Boldy thing. Humor in a tense chapter. Yes, the one who murdered your parents. Yes, and now he's sending members. Okay, that's got to be the funniest nickname for a Dementor ever. I do not remember Uncle Vernon being this funny. I mean, especially when it comes to naming Dementors. Moving on. And now he's sending just members after you. Looks like it, said Harry. I see, said Uncle Vernon, looking from his white-faced wife to Harry and hitching up his trousers. He seemed to be swelling, his great purple face stretching before Harry's eyes. Well, that settles it, he said, his shirt front straining as he inflated himself. You can get out of this house, boy. What? said Harry. You heard me. Out! Uncle Vernon bellowed, and even Aunt Petunia and Dudley jumped. Out! Out! I should have done it years ago. I was treating the place like a rest home. Puddings exploding, half the lounge destroyed, Dudley's tail, Marth bobbing around on the ceiling, and that flying forward Angelina. Out! Out! You've had it. Your history. You'll not stay here with some loonies after you. You're not endangering my wife and son. You're not bringing trouble down on us. If you're going the same way as your useless parents, I've had it. Out! Harry stood rooted to the spot. The letters from the ministry, Mr. Weasley, and Sirius were crushed in his left hand. Don't leave the house again, whatever you do. Do not leave your aunt and uncle's house. You heard me, said Uncle Vernon, bending forward now so that his massive purple face came closer to Harry's, so that Harry actually felt flecks of spit on his face. Get going! You were all came to leave half an hour ago. I'm right behind you. Get out and never darken our doorstep again. Why we ever kept you in the first place, I don't know. Well, I know, but that would be spoilers in a sense, so moving on. Marge was right. It should have been the orphanage. We were too soft for our own good. Thought we could squash it out with you. Thought we could turn you normal. But you've been rotten from the beginning, and I've had enough owls! The fifth owl zoomed down the chimney so fast it actually hit the floor before zooming into the air again with a loud screech, which I will not attempt. Harry raised his hand to seize the letter, which was in a scarlet envelope, but it soared straight over his head, flying directly at Aunt Petunia, who let out a scream, which I will not attempt, and ducked, her arms over her face. The owl dropped the red envelope on her head, turned, and flew straight up the chimney again. Harry darted forward to pick up the letter, but Aunt Petunia beat him to it. You can open it if you'd like, said Harry, but I'll hear what it says anyway. That's a howler. Let go of it, Petunia, ordered Uncle Vernon. Don't touch it. It could be dangerous. It's addressed to me, said Aunt Petunia in a shaking voice. It's addressed to me, Vernon. Look, Mrs. Petunia Dursley, the kitchen, number 4, Pivot Drive. She caught her breath, horrified. The red envelope had begun to smoke. Open it, Harry urged her. Get it over with. It'll happen anyway. No. Aunt Petunia's hand was trembling. She looked wildly around the kitchen as though looking for an escape route. But too late. The envelope burst into flames. Aunt Petunia screamed, which I will not attempt, and dropped it. An awful voice filled the kitchen, echoing in the confined space, issuing from the burning letter on the table. Remember my last, Petunia. Aunt Petunia looked as though she might faint. She sank into the chair beside Dudley, her face in her hands. The remains of the envelope smoldered into ash in the silence. What is this? Uncle Vernon said hoarsely. What? I don't. Petunia! Aunt Petunia said nothing. Dudley was staring stupidly at his mother, his mouth hanging open. The silence spiraled horribly. Harry was watching his aunt, utterly bewildered, his head throbbing fit to burst. Petunia, dear, said Uncle Vernon timidly. Petunia! She raised her head. She was still trembling. She swallowed. The boy We'll have to stay, Griffin, she said weakly. What? He stays, she said. She was not looking at Harry. She got to her feet again. Hey, but Petunia! If we throw him out, the neighbors would talk, she said. She was gaining her usual burst snappist manner rapidly, though she was still very pale. They'll ask us. They'll ask awkward questions. They'll want to know if he's gone. We'll have to keep him. Uncle Vernon was deflating like an old tire. But Petunia, dear. And Petunia ignored him. She turned to Harry. You're to stay in your room, she said. You're not to leave the house. Now get to bed. Harry didn't move. Who was that tower from? Don't ask questions, and Petunia snapped. Are you in touch with wizards? Oh, wrong voices. Harry didn't move. Who was that tower from? Don't ask questions, and Petunia snapped. Are you in touch with... Oh yeah, I whispered the first time. Okay. Harry didn't move. Who was that tower from? Don't ask questions, and Petunia snapped. Are you in touch with wizards? I told you to get to bed. What did it mean? Remember the last words. Go to bed! How come... You heard your aunt! Now get to bed! And that is the end of this chapter. Join me next week for chapter 3, The Advance Guard. Until then, bye!